Hello, Guru Nation. Welcome back to another episode of the Clinical Trials Guru. And I got Chris Sauber here, and I'm going to share my screen because today's Site Owner Academy went so well with Q&As. We didn't have time to uh, get into the slides. So Chris and I decided, hey, let's just do slideshow for the public today. And so we've got this topic, why clinical research generalists will rule the industry. And obviously,
The world? Why not the world?
sure, why not? Well, the world is much harder than the industry. But okay, obviously we're gonna try to use the perspective of a site owner because this is DSCS, which runs the Site Owner Academy. Okay, where this was supposed to be on today, but it wasn't. So, why clinical research generalists will rule the industry from the perspective of a site owner, but we're also going to get into just employees in research in general because that is what this is about. So let's get into it. How many slides was this, Chris? Do you remember?
I think it's six.
Okay, so companies want generalists. We actually, you know what, Chris? We had this conversation today in our Site Owner Academy. We just didn't even know we were covering the slides because we had this talk with one of our students. I told him you need an intrapreneur. I said the same thing in my Patreon mastermind yesterday. Companies need intrapreneurs. These are people who act just like an entrepreneur, but they don't want to take financial risks, so they rather work at a site or then start their own venture. You want someone like that at your site, especially when you're a smaller site, but definitely so when you get bigger as well. Companies want generalists, okay? Now, they also want specialists. And companies sometimes want to keep their employees as specialists because streamlining becomes easier. It makes the business more efficient, but it's not good for that individual's career to remain a specialist because specialists can get wiped out by technologies. Specialists can be replaced by cheaper specialists. There's all kinds of problems with specialists, but with generalists, it's a little harder to replace slash get rid of slash get ROI on this person's salary because every business owner thinks about the money that they're spending on their business and what it's being used for. At least they should be. How's it going, Chris?
Good. So I'm going to give an analogy here real quick. I don't know if that's front board, but so in baseball, and for those of you who don't like sports, I apologize, but in baseball, some of my favorite players over time have been utility players, right? They can play shortstop, left field, right field, first base, whatever's needed, right? Third base. Uh, One that comes to mind is Raul Abanya. I don't know who he is, but one of my favorite players, right? But he never could sign, and he was a good player, and he could hit. He always hit for around between 280 and 3. Never could get that big contract, right? So, do you think that applies also to research, right? So, if you're a generalist, are you kind of, for lack of a better term, pigeonholing yourself into kind of a lower spectrum in pay opposed to being a specialist?
In the beginning, probably, because nobody really. So this says companies want generalists, and they do, but they don't want to make you a generalist, right? They want to usually keep you as a specialist. Closest example I get is like a coordinator who you hire. They're promising. You start them out with the clinical stuff, right? Like this is what a source is. This is what regulatory is. Once they get comfortable with that, you get them into recruiting patients, right? Once they get comfortable with that, you get them into talking to other physicians, getting studies, et cetera, et cetera. You're slowly building a generalist because you need that entrepreneur at the smaller sites. At the bigger sites, they have people at all these functions, so that you're less likely to become a generalist at one of those places. To answer your question, I think companies hire for specialists. All right, so yes, you're kind of right. They
I
hire
think
for
they pay them more
specialists.
too. That's my opinion. I think they pay them more.
They pay them more. But if you are a multi-specialist, like a generalist who has specialist experience in multiple spheres, then you're going to get paid a lot at multiple different jobs. So you have way more at bats, to use
Mhm.
baseball analogy, as opposed to a specialist who, if that particular sphere gets wiped out or a technology comes and replaces that, you don't have anything to do because you have no other skills. So
Certainly.
companies want generalists even though they don't realize they want it. And even the big companies that have streamlined processes, at the top levels, they have generalists, right? So uh, you need, if you're a company, you need a certain amount of generalists and a certain amount of specialists. You're going to probably start off as a specialist. Now the question is, do you continue as a specialist or do you try to become a generalist? And I think for small businesses, you want generalists, and you want for you as a career, you want to be a generalist, in my opinion, even though you're going to start out as a specialist. Everybody starts out as a specialist. Being a generalist means having skills. Okay, we talked about this. So generalists tend to apply skills from other fields to clinical research. That is one way. We've seen it with salespeople. We've seen it. We just talked in the Site Owner Academy to one of our students and said, "Hey, right now this service industry is being decimated, right? The restaurant industry has been completely decimated, especially here in Los Angeles. So
Oh,
there's
yeah.
so
Hire
many,
a waitress.
yeah, there's so many out of work servers that have the skill set to be marketing people for your firm, because this person needed marketing help for the firm, patient recruitment, clinician recruitment, community outreach. What better person? These are people who in their previous job talked to strangers all day long, and they were financially rewarded for making the other person like them. This is exactly what you need if you're looking to hire a marketer. It's just, instead of selling the best things on the menu and some drinks, you're selling research opportunities. So this is a good example of a generalist. And guess what? That person from the restaurant industry, when they get hired at that site, guess what? They're getting hired to be a specialist. They're getting hired to be a marketing person for this site. But guess what? It's up to that person to demonstrate that they can do that job and master it. And then if they want to keep growing in the industry, they can either choose that path, remain a specialist, or continue being a specialist, but also start learning, okay, some of the clinical side to this. How can I be a coordinator so that I can have all of this to my arsenal? Then you get into, how do I do budgets and get studies for this site? Now you have the skill set to be a site director. And just
Mhm.
a few years ago, this same person was a server at a restaurant that got laid off because of COVID. So this is real life example of how somebody can go from another industry to clinical research to being a multi-specialist to eventually becoming a generalist.
Skill set that kind of combines the two, at least in my opinion, is it takes marketing for both, right? You're kind of a marketer when you're a waitress, right? They want you to sell certain products and things of that nature. Same thing in research, right? If you're trying to sell your site to get a study or whatever the position might be, it takes marketing. So, yeah.
Absolutely. And then management is a whole nother thing, right? Someone with a management background may not be familiar with clinical research, but can help site owners manage a site. Could be any example, right? Not just the server. Could be higher level jobs that people had from other industries. Being a generalist pays. This answers your question, Chris. At least Carlos is telling you, is giving you his answer. There are several business opportunities within research for generalists who want to pursue contractor roles. Some of the contractor roles that generalists can have include consultant, psychometric rater, patient rater, physician recruiter, sub investigator. It could be a whole bunch of other stuff too. All right. Having a side business strongly recommended for every I think that's, what am I doing here? Having a side business is strongly recommended for every person, even if you don't need the extra money. Okay. So even if you don't need the extra money, having a side business, like that person who gets hired to be a marketer, guess what? They need to, if they're going to stay at that site or work on their career at other sites, they should want to learn about being a coordinator, quality control, quality assurance, budgets. Make yourself indispensable. to sites.
You have a good example of that. One of our students, I can't remember.
Yeah, from the CRC Academy. When the pandemics hit, one of our graduates from the CRC Academy worked at a site with like 5 other coordinators. And because we taught her how to be a generalist, she knew how to do budgets, she knew how to recruit patients, she knew how to make source, she knew how to do regulatory, she knew how to do the clinops. Everyone else was kind of streamlined. So guess who they got rid of when the pandemic happened and all that panic was around, oh well, we're going to lose our studies, all of our studies are going to be on hold, which actually ended up happening to a slight extent, but not really. The industry actually got busier a little bit after that. But guess what? Everyone was laid off except this person, and she was kept because she was a generalist. And that
And
site, that company didn't even know that they wanted a generalist, but
right.
they needed a generalist.
Yep. Yep. Good analogy. Good segue back to the initial props we were giving. But
Yes.
I would just add, just to elaborate on the CRC Academy, we do teach generalists, right? But it's I don't know how in depth you would say we go, right? But you do learn the fundamentals of all these different topics.
Everything.
Whether you can
The
just step in
CRC
and
Academy has been blowing things out of the water. The CRA Academy every quarter is setting records as far
yep,
as like, just our business. CRC Academy, which is newer, is starting to make serious impact in the industry, which is very good. It's a leading indicator for good things to come, and might as well be called the Generalist Academy because that's really what it is.
well,
Uh, yeah,
absolutely. But we do teach more than just the fundamentals of being a coordinator, clinical research coordinator. We delve deeply into that. But everything else, we definitely give you the fundamentals. Right?
right.
I don't know if you could step in right away and be a great site director taking the CRC Academy, but you certainly could step in and be a coordinator right away.
Absolutely. Generalists can secure high paying positions, okay, after gaining enough experience. Starting off as a generalist is not easy and takes years of hard work. It also takes years of mastering certain specializations before you can call yourself a generalist. You need to master specializations one by one. Sites might be thinking, hey, well, why do we want a generalist? We just want everything streamlined because if we lose an employee to a competitor, why do we want to help that competitor now? Why do they get to benefit from having a generalist? Because of us. And that's a very uh, zero sum game to look at this. In my opinion, the benefits will outweigh the risks. And it's your job as the employer to keep your employees happy so that they don't leave, right? And with a generalist, you can accomplish more than with oftentimes numerous specialists if you have the right situation. So there's pros and cons, of course, to this as a site owner. But as an employee, I really don't see any cons other than because to answer your question about getting paid more, Chris, I would actually go back and say no because you're going to start out as a specialist, right? It's up to you to become a generalist.
No, I would agree with that,
So the con is you're doing more work for the same amount of pay.
certainly. But you're kind of guaranteeing yourself a position
That's right.
to what extent you can, right?
That's right.
Because again, with our CRC student, she was one of the few people not let go.
Yeah, and I still want to interview this person. This is like she's become a legend.
Yeah, bring her up often.
Yes. So that's it. And we have a clinical scoop show to record. So thank you, Chris. Any closing thoughts? You always bring it back down to reality. If you're a site,
Today, but my closing.
you're a site owner, okay? Do you want a generalist as an employee?
Um, so yes and no. I would say typically when we hire, it's a specialist, but I do like it when they become a generalist once they've been hired,
Do you
right? And
find that
capable.
it's as a site owner, do you find that helping this new hire eventually become a generalist is doing more good than harm for your business?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay.
Like I said, initially you hire already. Initially, you hire for a specialist, right? Got to fulfill this or fill this one position. Um, but I like it when that person is inclined to learn more, right? It's helpful. It's helpful because you never know, like I had said previously, when someone's going to be unavailable and you need something done, and you'd like somebody else to be able to handle that besides yourself.
Especially at the smaller sites, right?
Yep.
At the bigger sites, maybe it's less important, but then, it's not like everybody that you hire is going to even want to be a generalist. I mean, some people are just happy doing one thing and getting a paycheck, and that's it. Not everyone's ambitious like us, Chris. But the people watching and listening to this podcast, I would say 80% of them are. So we're speaking your language.